So it's the last day of July here in North Carolina. It's getting to that time of year that everybody looks forward to, the deer season rush, and I got a little bit lucky yesterday. Daniel Holch and I have been riding every evening, glassing deer in fields and things like that, and we've come to see a couple of good bucks feeding in a particular field in an area and locally to my house, about 10 minutes down the road. So I found the landowner's name, and it just one of those things where stars happen to align. The land they're on is a creek bottom, a field, you know, green fields down the bottom. I'm not really interested in hunting that because season gets here, they're not going to be there, and even if they are, you can't hunt down there. So, but the adjoining land, I come to find out from playing around on Onyx and from talking to a couple people, is actually owned by one of my co-workers. I had no idea that she had this land, her and her husband, and so I texted her last night, ended up getting the okay on this new piece of property. So I'm super excited. I know there's a couple good deer on there already, and it's a really good location. So I thought it would be a really good opportunity to show and how in our little crew approaches a brand new place. So this place is a private property. It's only about 20 acres. But the way it lays, and I'm going to show you here in a minute exactly how it lays, but the way it lays, it is the perfect 20 acres. And what makes it the perfect 20 acres is that it's surrounded by fields, it's surrounded by food, and it's kind of got a little bit of everything. And I'm going to show you on there exactly what I mean by everything as far as that 20 acres goes. How I approach this is how I would approach any public land thing, even though it is a private land parcel. What I'm looking for, I don't care if I'm going to a 10,000 acre public land in Ohio or Tennessee or Florida, anywhere, I would be looking for these things, and they all happen to be here. So I'm really excited about it. Thought it'd be a great opportunity to show you what's there. So I've never set foot on this property. Here in about an hour will be the first time I ever step on it. I've just seen it from a map and from the road. So I'm going to show you what I'm looking at on a map, what I'm going for, because again, if this was a 10,000 acre piece of property, I don't care if this where I'm about to show you is 3 miles deep. I'll go 3 miles deep to get to this kind of terrain, because the way these features are, it's absolutely perfect. Sometimes, again, it could be 3 miles deep. Sometimes it could be, you know, 100 yards behind a parking area. It just, this is what I'm looking for. So I wanted to show you that, and then I'm going to go just a little bit. I'm going to take the opportunity to put what we show on the map into practice. I'm going to go to the property. I'm going to take you to those points and show you what it looks like. I've never been there before, but I'd be willing to bet money that where we put these points, I'll be putting a tree stand very close to there, or coming in with my hanging hunt there very close, just from past experiences in places that look just like this. So anyways, let's dive into the map here and look at the property and see what I'm going to first, what I can eliminate first, and we'll talk about why here in just a second. Okay, so this is how the property lays. So I'm going to use this arrow to kind of point out the landlines, because I don't have those on there. Obviously, there's no point in putting their name, stuff like that on there. So anyways, the property basically goes up, joins this ridge, comes up and comes around here, and then eventually comes down this fence line. So it's basically this just strip up through here and around. Now, when I saw this on the map, I got extremely excited. And the first thing you're going to notice, and the first thing that you should look for, and somewhere it's going to be really good, is there's a ton of land diversity here. Anytime you have something like this, a lot of public land, you're going to see a ton of that, and that's going to be hardwoods. That's great, but if you got 10,000 acres of that, that's really hard to hunt, because a lot of times there's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing. But when you can find areas where there's tons of diversity, so you're going to have, that's going to be a lot thicker. That whole bottom is actually thicker than it looks on here. I've driven up this road to look for those deer. You can see some tall pines in here along this ridge. Again, you can see hardwoods up here and smaller trees down here. So there's a ton of diversity all in this property, this right on where I could hunt. And again, if this was a 10,000 acre piece, this is only 20 acres, but if this was 10,000 acres, I'd be going right here because, number one, of all that diversity. Now, if you want to look at these topo lines, you can see that there's a holler right here, okay? Then it goes right up the middle, all right? And then the thing that really interests me is that's what we call a saddle. You can see where these two lines come down, and they create a saddle right there. Now, what's typically going to happen is there's going to be a ton of sign in that saddle, because I promise you, if you're walking through here, you're inadvertently going to walk through that saddle. It's easier walking. Deer do the same thing. But when you combine 2 or 3 things together, so you've got habitat diversity, there's transitions in here, you have terrain, you've got a saddle, you got food on both sides, right? And we know this is thicker. More than likely, this is going to be a lot of bedding in here. It's going to be food up here, and then so we know right off the bat we're in good shape, which is why I got extremely excited when I found out that my coworker owned this particular piece of property. Now, I've got this point already put on there. Now that is pretty much like taking candy from a baby. Anytime you got a saddle like that, you know you're going to have bedding, you know you're going to have food, I can guarantee you that's going to be awesome. When we get there, we're going to find things like old rubs, we're going to find things like old scrapes, we're going to find all kinds of deer sign going across that, because they're going to travel that, all right? That's going to be a given. The tricky part, and the thing that my brain that I lay awake at night thinking, is going to be access. All right, obviously their landline comes right through here. I can't walk straight up through the middle. There's a road that comes right up the middle. I can't walk that because the deer, obviously there's bedding in here. I don't want to blow everything out to get to here. So right off the bat, I'm thinking about access, and I'm thinking that if I can get permission to either come through this field or walk right along the fence line, hopefully it's thick enough to where I can get by with this and come up the top of the ridge to get in without ever setting foot in there. That's the plan. So that's going to be a really good place. Now, what typically can happen is you're going to have a lot of your doe movement going one way or the other. It could be back and forth this way. It could be back and forth this way. We'll be able to find out when we get to see the trails and the foot sign and things like this. Either way, whatever the does are doing, you can guarantee. So if the does are coming like this, I can promise you the bucks are going to be coming like this during the rut, looking for a cruising buck. They're going to perpendicular their movement, and that's what on the podcast we talked about, perpendicular bucks perpendicular movement. Nathan Killen was talking about it. That's what that's going to look like. So again, it could either be does coming this way, bucks coming this way. Either way, this is going to be a good place. Now, the thing about a saddle, when you hunt a saddle, just a little free tip, I've never done as good actually in the middle of the saddle. One side or the other of that saddle is going to be better, is going to have where you're cruising across, and that's why that's another good spot. Now, one thing I want to point out is not only do we have a bunch of diversity, what you can't tell here is that this hill is also leeward, okay? So this way is north. We'll just point the arrow up. That way's north, that way's south. So obviously this is west, this is east. If I'm on a northwest wind, so the wind's going to be coming this way, or a north wind coming this way, you know, a lot of during the deer season we're going to have a northwest wind. It's going to be coming something like this. The air current is going to come over this ridge, which hangs a left right here and goes out this way. The predominant wind is going to be dumping over this hill this way. All right. What that means is late mornings you're going to have your thermals rising up here, and what's going to happen is right about here on the bottom side of this funnel, there's going to be what we call a little vortex where the thermals coming up and the predominant wind coming over mix. So I promise that somewhere in here is going to be a good place to catch a buck cruising. Absolutely, no doubt. So we know this place right off the bat. I know this is going to be good in early November because we're going to catch cruising bucks. One thing that I am excited about is I know that there's bucks down here. So now that we've got our map figured out, we've got several points that we're going to look at. We got some saddles, we got some stuff we know it's going to be bedding. We got some very probable cruising locations. We've probably even got some early season feeding going on. So we're gonna go out to the property, actually get to it, go to these points, show you what they look like actually in person, and what you can be looking for either on public or private or whatever it is. Again, I'm no expert. I'm just a guy that likes to bow hunt a whole lot, but this kind of setup specifically, that point that I talked a lot about, is somewhere that works. This buck right here was killed in a nearly identical situation. The lines, the contour lines looked almost identical, and so I've got a lot of confidence going places like this, whether it's in early September or November. I feel like on this property it's got places where I can be successful in any of those. So anyways, go with us. We're going to jump in the truck. We're going to ride about 10 minutes down the road and see what we can find. the video at the truck that it was going to be on one side of the saddle. There's generally not as much sign dead in the middle of it. I picked the other side for various different reasons. I was wrong. The other side is better. And then the reason why is you can see this strip of rhodo that comes up on this side, on this knoll. There's your edge, your transition. Like I said, anytime you can add 4, 5, 6 different combinations of reasons for deer to be here, that's why it's money. Now, I also said that the deer, and Nathan, this is playing off, I am completely plagiarizing Nathan Killen here. The bucks are going to perpendicular your does. And so all the doe sign is coming up out of this. They're crossing the saddle this way. They're going back and forth, and the reason is there's food on both sides of it. Easy transition. There's, it looks like cattle trail. There's a lot of deer in here. Looks like cattle trail is coming up out of this. So what I want you to notice is, though, is if I'm hunting this in November, and this is what I'm always dreaming of November, early November, I'm going to be right here, and these bucks are coming right out of this, and they're coming straight down here. You can see from their rubs. Here's old rubs, old big rub down there on that hemlock. They're coming right across this way. They're perpendicular in that movement. And the reason is I said this on the podcast and I'll say it again. Bucks, when I go to Walmart, there's nothing that makes me madder than trying to find my wife when she's not answering her phone. It drives me crazy. If I'm looking for my wife, I don't walk up and down every aisle because that's a waste of time. That's not efficient. I just end up walking around in circles and not finding her. What I do is I get on the main aisle and I look down every aisle, and eventually I run into my wife. It's a miracle. Deer the exact same way. It's just common sense. They can cover a lot more ground a lot more efficiently. Alan Altizer said on a podcast episode ago, scent is the number one form of communication for deer, and so they can smell. Those bucks can smell. They can smell, because of this being a leeward hill, they can smell the thermals coming up from this bedding that I know is bedding, or a jump deer down there. They can smell the thermals coming up. Okay, the predominant wind is coming over the hill in the northwest, west-northwest, which is usually what we have during bow season. And in this little vortex right here, the predominant wind is dumping. Thermals are coming up. He can smell anything on either side, and he can stay right off this knoll. Don't make the mistake of sitting right on the ridge. They don't walk down the ridges as much. It'll always be just off, and it's usually on the leeward side, just off. And you can tell from these rubs, leeward side, just off of where it's supposed to be, just off the top of the ridge. So
I walk back up the ridge to give the deer's point of view as it comes down. You can see there's a ton of rubs coming up and down this ridge, as well as scrapes in the rope. Keep in mind, a lot of this sign is made after dark in the middle of the night, and most of the time if you see this deer in daylight, it's going to be off on the leeward side. As you can see from all the sign, there's a ton of deer in this area, and I can't wait to get in there this fall. Maybe we can make it happen. Be sure to go check out our friends at the Professional Bowhunter Society, knowledge through experience, as well as check out the all-new Stickboys podcast. And as always, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at the Stickboys.